Welcome back to the Cash Flow Show. This is your host, Christian Carrillo. I'm super excited about our interview and our guest today. I think it's going to be an amazing interview. Our guest is Rocky Lalvani. Rocky serves as Chief Profitability Adviser for business owners. He teaches them how to ensure they get paid and make profit a priority. As a certified profit-first professional, he implements Michalowicz profit-first system. We change the accounting formula of series minus expenses equals profit to sales minus profit equals expenses. I know that sounds complicated, but Rocky's going to be chatting about that. But basically, this ensures that profit comes first, right? Rocky started with nothing when his parents immigrated to the United States when he was 2 years old, and his parents were in their 40s. It was his parents' second time starting over in life as they moved here to experience the American dream. Despite a lot of struggles and his mom passing away when Rocky was 7, he has achieved financial and life success. Rocky loves to share his journey and inspire others to achieve their dreams even faster. Rocky, again, thank you so much for being on the show. Truly, I think you're a great representation of what it means to pursue the American dream, right? So absolutely love your story and can't wait for you to share it with our listeners. Again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me here. Excited to be with you.
Of course. So why don't you get us started with a little bit more about who you are and how you got to where you are today?
Looking backward, it's so easy to connect the dots, but looking forward, it was impossible to see how that all came together. So as a kid, I was very entrepreneurial. I was the kid who was always figuring out how to make a buck. I lived in Jersey. I'd go into New York City. I'd buy stuff wholesale, bring it back, mark it up 100% and sell it to my friends and so forth. So I always was the one who was trying to figure out how to make money. And along that same path, I wanted to build wealth. And one of the things that I learned from my parents is not only do you have to make money, but you have to keep money. And those are two separate skills. I didn't realize they were two separate skills. Along those same lines, I made all that money as a kid, had $2,000 in cash, walked into a computer store and bought an Apple II. Back then, they were $2,000 in cash. They had a whopping 4K of memory, right? So you're talking about the early days of computing. And through that, I learned one of the early programs for business was VisiCalc. VisiCalc is the way precursor to Excel. It was electronic spreadsheets. So while I was in high school and in college, I was walking into large corporations, helping them create, build, and manage spreadsheets and showing accountants, how do you go from paper ledger to the spreadsheet? I didn't realize how much value was in the ability to do that and the ability to read those numbers. So I followed that traditional path, right? I did what I was supposed to, go to college, got a good job. Good job is the enemy of great. Eventually sat down, thought it through, realized where my skill sets were, and then started to make changes slowly to where I walked away from a really nice corporate job to doing what I love. And that's what I do today, helping people, especially business owners, figure out how to use their business to build wealth.
No, I love that. I love that. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about the journey that got you here, right? Because you talked about how, initially maybe when you started, you couldn't see what was in store in the future, right? So what were the steps that sort of led to, your decisions and the decisions you took and where you are today?
Well, so throughout this whole process, I was always building wealth. I understood the power of compounding. And I think that's really one of the things that truly drove me. But along with the power of compounding is the power of automating, which means one of the things I did is as soon as I got my first job, I started automating all my savings. And so money was constantly being pulled out and set aside, and then that money grew. And I always lived on what was left, and I always increased the amount that I was saving. I think when we got to the highest, we were probably somewhere in the 40% range for savings. So this all comes back to Parkinson's law. Parkinson's law says you will use up all the time and money that are allocated. What I had done without knowing it was constrain how much money I had to spend. And I still had a wonderful life and we did wonderful things, but I always lived below what my means were and within what I had to spend. So by doing that, I was able to build wealth. I thought building wealth was going to make me happy. And then you come to the realization, okay, I have all this money, but where is the happiness it was supposed to bring? Which kind of brings you to the second journey of figuring that out and doing that. And as part of that second journey was, how do I walk away from corporate? How do I do what I really want to do? And this is not overnight. I mean, this was probably 8, 9. Well, I mean, now we're probably at 10 years through that whole process, but it took years of thinking, testing, talking to people, and evolving through that. I think today you can do it faster because the answers I was looking for 10 years ago weren't on YouTube. Like, you know what I mean? Their podcasts weren't a thing back then. So the ability to today get the information to help you run faster, I think is more available than ever.
No, I love that. I love that. And as you're sort of speaking through that, it makes me think about my journey and where I currently stand, right? Because I'm at a point where my passive income is exceeding what I need to live off of. And I'm at this sort of point where I'm thinking to myself, all right, is it time to make the jump? But there's always this sort of sense of hesitancy, right? What if X and X and Y, what if all this happens? So it's super interesting that you mentioned all that.
Well, I think the answer to that in what I did when I left work, I had a 3-year runway. Like I knew that it was going to take me 3 years to get to where I wanted. And I wasn't expecting $1 for those 3 years. Now, was that the case? No. Within the 3 years, the income was far in excess of what I was doing. But I went into it with that attitude so that I was prepared for the long haul. Because I think making these types of shifts take time, they take money. And I think most often people think, oh, I can do this in 30 to 90 days. And then they become desperate, and desperate doesn't sell.
Absolutely. And I think this is a great segue, right? Because you're an expert in managing cash flow and profitability. Why don't you talk to our listeners a little bit more about what these items are and why they're important?
So all of this is based, a lot of this, at least the beginning part of this, all comes out of the book Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. Mike's a serial entrepreneur, very popular out there. He actually owned a forensic accounting firm. They investigated Enron. Yes, Enron was guilty, right? The accounting firm, his businesses weren't profitable. He didn't actually make his profit until he sold the business, and that's when he was profitable. So he walks away with millions, and then within 2 years, because he thought he was so smart, not realizing he was lucky, he blew it all to the point that they came for the keys to the house and the car, which of course causes you to rethink your life and the decisions you made and how they ended up. And I think one of the biggest things that came out of that was he realized accountants give you the wrong formula for profit. They tell you it's sales minus expenses equals profit, which means profit's a leftover. It's not constrained. It's not systematic. It's not automatic. And so by doing sales minus profit equals expenses, you're doing what you've been told. Pay yourself first. So you're scraping your profits before you go spending. And going back to Parkinson's law, you're now constraining yourself. And that's basically what it is. Profit First is nothing more than a cash flow system. It's kind of like the envelope system that Dave Ramsey talks about and others, where you give each dollar a job, you put it in the place to go do that job. And when that place runs out, well, it's time to be more resourceful because there's no more money there. So either you take it from another bucket where you figure out how to survive until the next round of money comes in. That's the exact system of what we do with Profit First for business owners. We give you your buckets, and your buckets are revenue, so you can easily see how much money's come in. Because when you have a mixed checking account, you never know how much is coming and going. But when you have a revenue account, it's real simple to see how much money came in. And then we allocate our money. So, of course, we allocate to profit. The next thing we do is we allocate to owner's pay. Most business owners underpay themselves or don't know what's the appropriate amount to pay themselves, nor do they have a system for income growth over time. The third thing we allocate to is taxes, because you have to pay taxes to the IRS. And so when you have the money set aside, it's real easy to stroke a check. Just this morning, a client said to me, "Oh yeah, I got a $70,000 tax bill." He's like, "No problem. We have more than that saved. It's no big deal." Right. I mean, but that's the way it comes across. We all hate paying taxes, but they have the ability to deal with it without even blinking an eye. And then what's left, what's constrained, is what your operating expenses are. And you learn to run your business lean. Too often, I think businesses spend money to spend money, hoping to make money, instead of actually thinking it through, being lean and running efficiently.
No, I love that. Sort of touches on the point of being intentional about everything too. So I think that that's incredibly important. And one other item that I wanted to talk to you about is accounting reports, right? A lot of times when we're talking about business, people oftentimes will say, go to the, check out the accounting reports, right? But as you've noted in the past, they don't always tell you what you need to know. Could you explain what you mean by that?
Sure. So I think for most business owners, where they focus is on the profit and loss. And so that begs the question, my P&L says I'm profitable, where's the cash, right? And here is the truth. Your P&L is missing a lot of information. Your P&L was designed by accountants for paying taxes. They were not designed for you to understand where the cash in your business was going and how truly positive cash flow you are, and also maintaining a good idea of your cash position. So just off the top, a couple of things missing from your P&L are your accounts receivable. So if people owe you money, it will say many times in your P&L that you're profitable, but you haven't been paid. So that's where your money is. It's somebody else's pocket because you didn't bother to do your accounts receivable. It could be that you took out a loan and you're paying your loan back. Well, the principal parts of loans don't show up on the P&L. If you're taking a draw from your company, it doesn't show up on the P&L. I can't tell you how often business owners treat their business like a piggy bank and have no idea how much is really going to them and how much they're starving their business. So the P&L gives you an idea of profitability, but it's missing a lot of the cash flow drivers. So now we go to the balance sheet. The balance sheet will show you where your cash is. Most people treat a balance sheet like a static item. They look at it for a date and they go, okay, I have this. What the real art of the balance sheet is looking at the changes from month to month. The problem with that is it's like, when you were a kid, if you've got kids, they show you two pictures and they go, find the 8 differences. You're scratching your head. Oh, this one's got, this, and this one's got a triangle instead of a square. It's not easy to do. And I think for most business owners, trying to figure out what those differences are and what caused them is not easy. And so that's usually where a lot of your cash is lost, on the balance sheet. And if you don't know how to measure the changes, you can't figure it out. People talk about cash flow reports. Yeah, cash flow reports are wonderful. They're a top line review, but when you pull them out of QuickBooks or somewhere else, they really don't give you a good picture of what happened. So here we have 3 accounting reports. Not a single one tells the business owner easily and in timely, because most of these reports are days, if not weeks, to months old. And so business owners don't use them because it's a rear view mirror. They're like, okay, those are my accounting reports from last month. What do I do today so that I can figure out tomorrow? And I think that's a big problem with the accounting reports. They're not designed for you to make those choices. So a big part of what we do is what we call dynamic forecasting. We are constantly looking at history, looking at today, and looking at tomorrow, and figuring out what do we need to do to hit our target. easiest way to understand this is you get in an airplane, you sit down, the pilot says, we're taking off from LA and we're going to JFK, right? He knows where he's going. He looked at the gas tank and said, do I have enough fuel to get to JFK? Yes or no? Because if you don't, he's not taking off. And then he gets up in the air, and invariably he's hitting wind and he's off course 99% of the time, but he's constantly course correcting. And a few hours later, he finds this tiny little airstrip on the other side of the country and he lands. Businesses need the same thing. You need a target. Where are you going? Right? You need the instrumentation to help you get there. One of those is cash, which is like your fuel gauge. But there are a ton of other instruments your business needs to understand where it's going to help you get from where you started to where you want to land. And the fact that you are going to hit turbulence, you're going to hit storms, you're going to reroute, things are going to change. But how do I know that? And the clearest example of that is, you think about it, you're the pilot in a plane. It's out and it's a beautiful day. You look at the gas gauge, you got a half a tank of gas. You're like, oh, I got plenty of gas. Life is good. You look at the altimeter. It says you're at 8,000 feet. You're like, oh, I'm way off the ground. Life is good. But then you hit a couple of clouds and now you can't see, maybe a little bad weather, maybe a recession, right? And now you're looking at your gauges and they tell you, well, you got a half a tank of gas and you're at 8,000 feet. Here's my question. Is that good enough? If there's a mountain in front of you that's 12,000 feet, you're going to crash and burn because you're missing targets to understand and to look at those gauges and see what's true for your business. And that's what every business needs, a dashboard that shows them what's going on, that they can measure forward and backward. I can tell you for a lot of my business owners what's going to happen in 6 months, how much money they're going to have, because we build those forward dashboards to help them see what's coming.
Wow. No, I love that. I love that. I think that's incredibly important. I'm super happy you brought that up. And, one other item that you had alluded to a little earlier was, these phases that you've gone through in life, right? Maybe the first phase is just about wealth building, right? Then that second one is, all right, I've realized money does not make me happy, right? So one item that you and I were talking about earlier is, why money won't make you happy, right? And then how to create harmony in life, right? Because it's something you've gone through. Why don't you talk to us a little bit more about that?
So we use the word harmony on purpose. All right. Most people talk about balance in life. What does balance mean? That everything's got to be equal. Let's face it. Nobody in life is going to have balance, right? You can't get everything perfect. And so what harmony is about, it's the understanding that at different parts of your life and at different parts of the month, and maybe at different parts of the day, different things are going to come up. And you realize that sometimes you're going to be out of balance. Maybe you're busy with the kids tonight. Well, then you can't work. Does that mean you're out of balance? Probably. Does that mean you're not in harmony? No, because you're playing the song of life and it's going to have different parts. Sometimes the piano comes up. Sometimes it's the drums. Sometimes it's the vocal. Play your song. Figure out what kind of music you like, and then create your life in alignment with that so that you are living in harmony. You're doing what you love, and understand there's going to be sprints. There's times where work is busy. There's times when, life is busy from other things. And so you've got to go with all of that. But the first part of that, and the part that nobody does, is to answer a simple question. What do you want?
I love that. I think that's powerful. I've noticed you keep on sort of hitting on this topic of intentionality, right? Being very intentional with business, with life.
It is. If you are clear, if you got in that airplane that we were talking on and the pilot comes on and says, hey, guys, we're going for a joyride today. I don't know if there's any gas in the plane. We're sure going to have fun. How many of you sitting on the plane? You're all running for the exit. Well, your life is no different. Where are you
Mm,
going and how are you going to get there? You're not intentional. You're on a joyride. And sure, it's fun until you crash and burn.
yeah. No, I love that. I love that. And Rocky, it's been a pleasure getting to know more about you. And I'm sure that our listeners have picked up on some golden nuggets. I definitely know I have. And I hope they take advantage of them, right? But we typically like to end our interviews with something we call a quick response round, which are questions that have been pulled from our listeners. So if you're game for it, I'd love to jump into that.
Sure, let's do it.
All right. If you lost it all today, what would you do?
If I lost it all today, I still have my knowledge, right? I still have
Mhm.
my contact database. I can still get out and market and figure out a way to build it back. I mean, life is going to knock you down.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter. I think it's not that you get knocked down, it's that you get back up.
Mhm.
Too often people get stuck in fear. So if I lost it all, I just figure out what do I need to do to get back up and running. And within 30 days, I think we could get it moving.
There you go. I love that. Going forward, what do you have planned in your business and why?
So the biggest thing we're doing right up until recently, we were strictly one-on-one coaching, which really limits me to the maximum number of people I want to work with. So the business isn't scalable. What we have done is created a more scalable product that allows people to get the help they need with less of our inputs, but we still collaborate with them. So it's allowing us to grow and to reach more people that need specific help. And so that's what we're working on at the moment.
No, I love that. I love that. If you could give our listeners one piece of advice today, what would it be?
One key piece of advice,
Yeah.
just answer that question that we said before. What do you want?
Hmm. Yeah. No, I love that. I love that. All right. Last one here for you, Rocky. How can our listeners get to know more about you and connect with you?
So I have two podcasts where I teach everything that I do. The one is Profit Answer Man, where we go into business finance. The other is Richer Soul, where we talk about life and leadership and how do you become that, create that ultimate life that you want.
Awesome, Rocky. Well, again, thank you so much for hopping on the show. It truly was a pleasure. Really, really great episode. I think a lot of golden nuggets were dropped and definitely look forward to catching up again.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Take care.